It's a warm Sunday afternoon at the Dawa railway station. The second platform is full with people ready to hop onto one of the busiest express trains in Ethiopia. Finally, the train arrives, traveling all the way from the port of Djibouti to Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. On board are over 1,000 passengers, all packed into only 5 carriages. Besides being one of the most important railway connections between Djibouti and Ethiopia, this railway line is also a vital supply of emergency help to the distraught population of Ethiopia, which were dealing with famine and drought at the time. It is January 13th, 1985, a very busy period for people in Ethiopia, being right after Christmas on the 7th of January and just before Timkat, a major religious festival in Ethiopia, celebrating the baptism of Jesus. A lot of people travel home to prepare for the upcoming festivities. The train leaves for Awash, a small but beautiful town surrounded by breathtaking nature and stunning landscapes which make up the Awash National Park. Through it flows the famous Awash River. The train ride continues, and many passengers look forward to crossing the 40-foot bridge spanning a mesmerizing gorge over the river. As the afternoon creeps up, the train starts to pick up speed. With 500 miles ahead, the journey is still very long. The train approaches the bridge, and many of the passengers turn towards the windows in order to observe the beautiful scenery, still clueless to what would happen next. Going ahead at full speed, the train starts crossing the bridge and arrives at a curved portion where they need to make a turn. Everything is still fine after the first few carriages pass this distorted part of the bridge, but as more parts of the train start crossing this section, the front of the train starts to lose control. The driver is not able to regain control over the locomotive as the train is traveling way too fast. The wheels of the locomotive are getting detached from the rails, but the passengers are still peacefully seated, watching over the beautiful ravine. Suddenly, the train starts swerving violently, and the passengers get slammed in every direction imaginable. Then there is silence as the train comes to a standstill. The innocently clueless passengers are trying to make sense of what just happened when the ground under their feet suddenly gets pulled away. The rear carriage was the first one to go down, taking many screams and cries for help down with it. The passengers in the front of the train observe this cruel twist of fate in horror as they see the carriage descending into the deadly abyss. This was followed by 3 other carriages separating from the locomotive, hurtling off the tracks and plunging into the deep unknown, meeting the same fate as the ones they just prayed and cried for. At this moment, a million questions must have flashed through their minds, like, will they ever make it out of here alive? Or what would happen to their loved ones? Most of these questions sadly remained unanswered for many of them, with the most important question of all being subject to a lot of speculation. As we'll soon find out, the answer to the question, why did this happen, was not a straightforward one. Many details of the accident remained unclear for a while, as the accident took place in a remote area, removed from large cities, which restricted the direct access to communication lines. After word of the accident reaches official sources, the Red Cross is the first to take initiative, sending rescue teams to the sites of the accident immediately, as well as offering valuable insights on the case. According to an Ethiopian railway official, helicopters were sent to rescue survivors. The health ministry, local hospital workers, and members of the Ethiopian army also joined forces to help the victims and their families. The initial casualty figures came from a press agency in Addis Ababa that was owned by the Ethiopian government, so its credibility was questioned. According to the railway officers in Djibouti, there was no word of any foreign passengers being on the train. Later on, the relief workers at the scene were able to give more accurate statistics, and it was revealed that the death toll was no lower than 449, and at least 500 were injured. When the first rescue teams arrived on the scene, they encountered a gnarly reality. According to an article published in the New York Times a day later, 4 government helicopters carried the most seriously injured to the Haile Mariam Mammal Hospital in Nazareth, a city about 70 miles south of Awash. A spokesman at the Black Lion Hospital in Addis Ababa said 16 victims arrived by helicopter today. Despite all the parties involved and the efforts made to clarify what had happened, even days after the incident, there was still this weird air of mystery surrounding the whole case, with no clear answers in sight. But while authorities and third parties were busy rescuing survivors and trying to make sense of it all, a second problem emerged. The now damaged railway track was not only a major part of that state's infrastructure, but was also used for emergency help to the distraught population of Ethiopia, which was dealing with severe famine and drought. Millions of people from all around the world had sent in their donations to support Ethiopia during this time. The route was essential for supplying emergency aid as it connected Ethiopia to the port of Djibouti and the Red Sea. But now, this railway line was cut off, and nothing could pass through. The local population in need saw hope diminish as no one knew how long it would take for repairs on the railway and bridge to be completed and the vital rail link to be established again. However, the government stepped in at the last moment and assured that emergency help would not be abandoned even amid all this chaos. Tafari Wasson, a representative for Ethiopia's Relief and Rehabilitation Commission, proposed that the emergency supplies for famine relief that normally came from Djibouti by rail would be temporarily carried by air. This was a great relief for the approximately 8 million lives that were endangered due to hunger and poverty. With this problem solved, and while the survivors recovered from this traumatic experience, the government set its focus on finding out what really happened during the accident. With that, the Transport and Communications Minister, Yusuf Ahmed, launched an investigation to determine the nature and cause of the accident. But with the lack of official information and the destitute people starting to reach their breaking point, naturally, conspiracy theories began to emerge. An Ethiopian leader by the name of Mengistu Haile Mariam came forward with some shocking accusations. Before the accident, he warned numerous times that the railway track could be a potential target for anti-government guerrillas. Therefore, it was natural for suspicion to go in that direction once the catastrophe struck. It's also important to note here that this bridge was built by the French almost 67 years ago and had to be closed off for a few weeks in January 1984 after attacks were launched from the Western Somali Liberation Front. And it's not like this was the first time that this bridge saw the worst of the Civil War. It was also shut down for a whole year between 1977 to 1978 because of the daunting desert war between Somalia and Ethiopia. So this bridge had seen chaos before too. So these allegations were not something out of the blue. On the other hand, the diplomats begged to differ from Mengistu's opinion because they didn't see any sinister forces at play after conducting their investigation. They combated Mengistu's claim with the fact that the bridge was located more than 200 miles away from the Somali border, where most enemy guerrillas have their headquarters. So sabotage was ruled out as the cause of this calamity. In the end, the Ethiopian Ministry of Transportation blamed the crash on excessive speeding on the curve by the driver. The government already had its fair share of problems dealing with internal political resistance, so they needed to do something immediately to put out this fire. As a result of this tension, the reckless train driver was arrested and kept in custody while people mourned the deaths from the Awash Rail disaster. On the Monday following the crash, a communal funeral for 282 victims was held near Awash. The remains of the rest of the 110 people were given away for burial to their loved ones. An Ethiopian press agency informed that attempts to take out the remains of the deceased from the railway carriages also continued on the very same day. The accident was the deadliest train crash in Africa and was at the time the third deadliest train accident worldwide. If you found this video interesting, Don't forget to subscribe, as these videos take a long time to make, and your support gives me great motivation to make even more videos like these.